The former Weston Mill and Weston Mill Dam are located on the Millstone River, adjacent to the borough of Manville, Somerset County, New Jersey, about 1.5 miles upriver of the confluence with the main stem of the Raritan River. The purpose of the dam was to provide water power to the Weston Grist and Sawmill on the east bank of the river that was built in the mid-1740s. The earliest surviving deeds for Weston Mill date back to 1796. These handwritten deeds are quite a challenge to read and decipher, but they revealed the succession of mill owners and how the mill operations were expanded over time. The deeds include references to grist mills, saw mills, and mill dams, verifying the longevity of milling operations here, and when the site began to be described as Weston Mills in the chain of title record. Colonial-era maps indicate that in these early years, the mill was known as Shanks Mill. Revolutionary War military maps depicted the strategic location of the mill, now owned by Abraham Van Nest, which was the site of a skirmish between British and American forces on January 20th, 1777, when the Americans recaptured grain and flour stolen from the mill. Later maps would depict the mill and its subsequent owners, such as William T. Rogers, until it was named Weston Mill to correspond with the adjacent village of Weston. The first two known photographs of Weston Mill were taken in circa 1910, and they show the timber crib dam across the Millstone River and the 3.5-story wooden-framed mill building. A rarely seen view of the eastern side of the mill shows where the loading of grain occurred, as evidenced by the wagon wheel tracks and the presence of a bag hoist and rope near the peak of the roof. Photographs taken in the 1930s and 40s show when Wilbur Smith, who acquired the mill from his father in 1925, shored up the mill's foundation walls and dam with concrete. Photographs from the 1960s and 70s suggest a deterioration of both the mill building and its foundation walls and piers from the river's flow and periodic flooding events. Then, on May 31, 1982, the mill building collapsed into the Millstone River, perhaps triggered by the failure of the supports holding up the river-facing side of the building. Elderly mill owner Wilbur Smith was not able to marshal the resources to save the mill building, but a local historic preservation group, the Meadows Foundation, planned an attempt to recover historical artifacts from the mill, including the retrieval of machinery, oak timbers, and grist stones. On June 25, 1983, Meadows Foundation volunteers performed the first phase of their planned salvage operation, which involved temporarily stabilizing the building and gaining access to the second and third floors. They recovered solid oak beams and several pieces of machinery, including grain-crushing machines. One of them read, "The Sullivan Crusher, Excel Foundries, Lebanon, New Jersey." Photographs taken during the salvage operation shows that one of the mill's grist stones, weighing several hundred pounds, was retrieved intact. Most compelling of all was the recovery of two cornerstones, a small, squared block of shale 2.5 feet long with the initials JMB 1803, assumed to be John M. Bayard, who took ownership of the mill in 1803. A second, larger cornerstone with an elaborate engraving was also recovered that read, "Rebuilt by I.R. Cornell, 1844, undoubtedly Isaac R. Cornell, who purchased the mill in 1843. The Meadows Foundation planned to return to the site on July 9, 1983, to continue their recovery efforts. But in the early morning hours of July 7, 1983, the mill was apparently set ablaze and completely destroyed. Multiple attempts to contact Meadows Foundation members over the last several years to inquire whether any of the recovered artifacts still exist was unsuccessful. So I'm here at the Weston Dam, July 18th, 2014, and the river's a bit flooded. When that occurs, water is impounded behind the dam and begins to spill over into the foundation of the old mill. And this is a serious problem, destabilizing these ruins. One of the advantages of the dam removal will be to eliminate that impoundment, and therefore the river will be diverted away from the foundation. We not only have a significant pour over here, parallel to the foundation, but also upstream, current pouring through several holes in the actual foundation block. So the best thing for this particular mill ruin would be to eliminate the dam and stabilize it and preserve the ruin for further investigation and study. The surviving mill foundation is a combination of several building and rebuilding episodes. Wilbur Smith rebuilt the walls of the turbine and tail race rooms with concrete in multiple phases between the early 1920s and late 1940s. Linear concentrations of stone on the bank may date to the original 1740s construction of the mill, along with Isaac R. Cornell's rebuilding of the mill in 1844. With one surviving wall section, which was later reinforced with a steel I-beam frame, built using distinctive brownstone blocks that were a popular building material in the 18th and 19th centuries. The south upstream concrete wall of the turbine room contains 6 wooden water control sluice gates, each approximately 3.5 feet wide, that were accessible using a catwalk on the outside of the building. The wooden stop logs of several of these water control gates are still intact, with river water flowing through the gaps between the logs. By adjusting the height of the sluice gates, the miller could control the volume of water entering the turbine room. Among the artifacts found in the turbine room was an intact turbine, one of the 3 25 or 28 horsepower turbines that were reported to be operating in the early 1920s under a head of 4 3/4 feet. Other artifacts identified within the turbine room and the downstream tail race room included components of the mill's powertrain, such as gears and shafts, miscellaneous parts, and several steel I-beams and wooden beams and joists. Objects found in the river during the dam removal were also placed here prior to stabilization of the surviving mill foundation walls. It appears that during the June 1983 salvage operations by the Meadows Foundation, that numerous powertrain components were piled on the downstream bank, including numerous bevel gears and shafts. Several heavily weathered flat belt pulleys were also identified in the powertrain component pile on the downstream bank. It was ascertained that the Blackwell's Mills Canal House Association took possession of the recovered Weston Mill stationary bed griststone, which now serves as a landing at the side door entrance of the canal house. It is plausible that a runner stone at the nearby former Blackwell's Mills site on the Millstone River may also be from Weston Mill. Although Weston Mill has been lost, there are surviving grist mills that I visited that greatly informed my interpretation of the operational layout of Weston Mill and how its surviving powertrain components may have functioned. Please support these historic mills and check for visitation dates when milling operations are being conducted.